The small black memory card felt like a live coal burning in my palm. I found it completely by accident, my fingers tracing the torn lining of Ben's blue backpack. The police had returned all his belongings in a single, sad, clear plastic bag, a silent, heartbreaking inventory of my 10-year-old grandson's life. There was a wrinkled notebook, a half-empty packet of gum, and one lonely, grimy sneaker. I was just holding the backpack, desperately hoping to catch some faint trace of his little boy's scent, when I felt that uneven bulge. My heart jumped. Something was taped up inside the lining. With trembling, stiff old fingers, I worked the tiny card free. My hands would not stop shaking as I slid it into the slot on my clunky old laptop. It whirred to life. The card held just one video file. The timestamp on it made my breath catch. It was from the very afternoon he died. The camera angle was low, like it was pinned to a chest or a jacket pocket. The audio hit me first. Oh, that sound. It was Ben's laughter, bright and completely unburdened, a sound I was sure I'd never get to hear again in this life. He was filming his own feet, skipping along the gravel shoulder of Old County Road 12. Then came David's voice, my son-in-law. "Hey, buddy, watch this rock skip." The camera view swung up suddenly. There was David, smiling that easy smile of his, a large, flat stone in his hand. He was standing right between Ben and the empty two-lane road. "Come over here," he said, his voice so calm. "You'll get a better angle from here." I watched, frozen, as Ben's small frame shuffled into the shot, turning his back to the road. David's hand came down on my grandson's shoulder. It wasn't a pat. It was a firm, deliberate grip. The smile never left David's face, not for 1 second. He didn't so much push as he pivoted, using his own body weight to swing Ben around and then hurl him backward, directly into the path of the oncoming truck. The engine's roar suddenly filled the audio a terrible second before the awful, muffled impact. Then the screen went black. The official police report called it a tragic accident. A boy chasing a stray ball. A driver with no time to stop. I sat in the sterile silence of my living room, the horrific truth screaming from that darkness on my screen. My grief shattered and then reformed into something else. My purpose crystallized, cold and hard as a diamond. He would pay. Not through the courts, which had already failed my boy, but through me. I would make sure of it. I would pay for this with my remaining peace, with my very soul, and I paid that price willingly. With a steady hand now, I ejected the deadly little memory card. I sealed it tight inside the small metal lockbox I kept for old tax documents. Then I picked up my cordless phone from the side table. I had a Sunday family dinner to host, and I needed to make sure my son-in-law would be there. I set the table with my good china, the wedding gift plates with the delicate blue rim I always saved for special occasions. The roast chicken sat in the center of the platter, its skin a perfect, crackling golden brown, surrounded by carrots and potatoes. It looked picture-perfect, which made it feel like a grotesque parody of a normal Sunday dinner. My hands trembled just a little as I placed the last fork. Every normal thing felt wrong now. My daughter, Melissa, arrived first. The sight of her broke my heart all over again. She was so thin, her eyes hollowed out and dark with a grief that seemed to have eaten her from the inside. She moved like a ghost through my front hall, barely making a sound. When she hugged me, her arms felt like fragile bundles of sticks. "Thanks for doing this, Mom," she whispered into my shoulder. Her voice was so flat. David thought it might help, a sense of routine. "Of course, honey," I said, forcing my own voice to sound steady and soft. But inside, my purpose was cold and clear. "Tonight, I wasn't just a hostess or a comforting mother. I needed to watch him. I needed to study the man who could do what he did, right here in the environment he probably thought was still safe and unsuspecting. David walked in just a few minutes later, carrying a cellophane-wrapped supermarket bouquet of carnations and daisies. He went straight to Melissa, hugging her and planting a kiss on her temple with a practiced tenderness. Then he turned to me. "Eleanor," he said, and opened his arms. His embrace was the same as it had always been. Strong, a bit too tight, slightly patronizing. "The house smells amazing. You really didn't have to go to all this trouble." He looked the complete part of the grieving stepfather, his handsome face arranged into a sincere mask of somber concern. My eyes went straight to his hands. They were large, capable hands. They were perfectly steady as he poured himself a glass of water from the pitcher on the sideboard. Those were the hands that had gripped my grandson Ben's shoulder before he fell. Throughout the quiet dinner, I steered the conversation with what I hoped was a gentle, mournful touch. I asked about the memorial foundation they'd started in Ben's name. David spoke earnestly and at length about fundraising goals and community outreach, his voice occasionally catching with what sounded for all the world like real, thick emotion. It was a masterful, chilling performance. With every bite of my food, I had to swallow down the scream that was building behind my teeth, a solid, painful pressure I fought to contain. Then Melissa got up to go to the kitchen for more gravy. The moment the door swung shut behind her, David leaned forward slightly over the table. His mask slipped for just an instant, so quick you might miss it if you weren't watching for it. His eyes, which were usually a warm hazel, turned flat and cold, and assessing as they scanned my face. "You're holding up remarkably well, Eleanor," he said, his voice lower now. "We were so worried about you being here all alone in this big house, surrounded by all the memories." It wasn't concern. It was a probe, a test. He was checking the perimeter for cracks, for any tiny sign that I knew something. The real surprise for me in that moment wasn't his guilt. That was a dark, settled fact in my soul. What chilled me straight through was the flicker of his suspicion. It meant he wasn't just a monster who had acted in a single, uncontrollable moment of rage. He was calculating. He was careful. He was thinking about consequences, about cover-ups, even now. And the most terrifying part of all was the dawning realization. He was already watching me, too. 2 days after that tense dinner, I gathered my nerves and drove downtown to the county clerk's office. My purpose was concrete. I needed to get a copy of the full police report on Ben's accident, not just the short summary page they'd mailed me. A terrible thought had taken root. If my son-in-law, David, had orchestrated something, he might have found a way to influence the official investigation. I needed the raw, unvarnished details to see for myself. The government building felt old and quiet. The clerk behind the counter was a young woman with kind but tired eyes. She took my formal request form without much comment. As I waited on a hard plastic chair, I scanned the quiet, fluorescent-lit office. That's when my heart jumped into my throat. I saw him. Officer Driscoll, the man listed as the primary investigator on Ben's case, was leaning casually against a doorway in the back hallway. He was talking to a superior and laughing at some joke. Watching him chuckle, a cold, hard fury tightened my chest. My sweet grandson was just a closed file to this man, a coffee break story. The injustice of it took my breath away. When my name was called, I collected a surprisingly thick folder. I hurried out to my car, needing privacy. Sitting in the sun-heated parking lot, I carefully opened the file and began to pore over the pages. My hands weren't quite steady. The official reports were dry, The witness statements from the scene were frustratingly brief and cursory. The driver of the truck had been fully cleared of any wrongdoing. The scene photos were clinical and awful, but I forced myself to look at everyone. Then, in a supplementary evidence log near the back, my finger stopped on a line. Item Nigger 14. Miner's backpack and contents secured. It was logged as being signed out by Officer Driscoll himself, and then signed back into the evidence room exactly 1 hour later. 1 single hour. What on earth could he have needed with Ben's backpack for a whole hour? The pressure in my head mounted, a dull throb of suspicion. David had money, social standing, and a clean record. Could he have reached a cop? The last little bit of faith I had in the system meant to protect us just evaporated, leaving a hollow, angry feeling. I drove home in a daze, the heavy folder sitting on the passenger seat like an accusation. As I turned onto my quiet, tree-lined street, a movement caught my eye. A sleek, black SUV with dark, tinted windows pulled out from the curb a few houses down from mine. It drove off slowly in the opposite direction. My brain said it could be nothing, maybe a visitor. But my street is a small cul-de-sac where everyone knows each other's cars. Its presence felt like an unwelcome interruption. The real surprise, however, was waiting inside my own home. When I walked into my living room, it just felt different. The air was still. Nothing obvious was out of place. Not a cushion on the sofa or a picture frame on the wall. But then I looked at my bookshelf. The small metal lockbox where I keep important papers was turned around. The keyhole was facing the back wall toward the shelves. I always leave that box turned with its keyhole facing the front window, toward the light. Someone had been in my house. I didn't touch that box. Just looking at it made my heart race. Instead, I went to the kitchen to make a pot of tea. My hands were shaking, so I had to focus real hard to keep them steady. It was pure willpower, I tell you. The whole time my mind was spinning. Someone had been inside my house, my safe place. They had checked that box, opened it, and put it back just a little bit wrong. I noticed because I'm particular about how things sit. Later, with a pair of kitchen gloves on, I worked up the nerve to look. The video was still there, thank goodness. So they knew I had it. Or at least they knew I had something important. That changed everything for me. It wasn't about just collecting clues anymore. Now I had to actively defend myself and what I knew. I needed a backup plan, and I desperately needed to figure out what David was after. Then it hit me, a thought so awful it took my breath away. Ben's life insurance policy. I remembered it clear as day. I'd helped my daughter Melissa with the paperwork when Ben was just a baby. It was a small policy, meant to help with his college someday. The memory was sweet, but the thought now was ugly. I decided to call my lawyer, Frank. He was a good friend of my late husband, a kind man. I called him under the guise of wanting to update my own will, which wasn't entirely a lie. After we exchanged our usual pleasantries, he asked about my arthritis. I asked about his grandkids. I steered the conversation. Frank, in a situation like Melissa's, with a minor child, who controls a minor's life insurance policy? I tried to sound casual, just a grieving grandmother with morbid curiosity. Frank's voice was gentle, thinking I was lost in my sorrow. Typically, the custodial parent is the beneficiary, Eleanor. That would be Melissa. But the policy owner, the one who pays the premiums, is the one who maintains control. Who owned Ben's policy? I already knew the answer. Melissa had mentioned it years ago, almost in passing. David had taken over the payments after they got married. I'm not sure. I lied, my throat tight. Just a morbid thought. Forget I asked. We said our goodbyes and hung up. Sitting there with the phone in my hand, the pieces clicked into place with a sickening finality. David was the policy owner. Melissa was the beneficiary. So the money itself wasn't the motive for killing Ben. It was the tool. It was how he planned to control Melissa afterward, to keep her dependent and broken right beside him. What crushed me, what really froze my blood, was the layered cruelty of it all. He didn't just take a boy. He coldly engineered the aftermath to trap his mother. I couldn't sit still after that. That very night, I got to work. I copied the video file onto 3 separate flash drives. It took a little while, as my computer is old and slow. For the first one, I addressed an envelope to Frank's law office. I included a short note saying it was old family videos for safekeeping, hoping he'd just store it away. The second drive, I put in a small mason jar, sealed it up tight with tape, and buried it deep in my backyard garden near my rose bushes. The third drive, I attached to a lanyard and decided to keep it on my person, tucked inside my blouse. It made me feel a little safer, having it close. Just as I was finishing up, feeling exhausted and on edge, the doorbell rang. It was 10 o'clock at night. Nobody good visits at that hour. I crept to the door and looked through the peephole. Officer Driscoll was standing on my porch, his face serious and completely unreadable in the dim light. I opened the door just a crack, the chain lock engaged. "Officer, it's late." Driscoll offered a tight, professional smile. "Mrs. Wilkins, apologies for the hour. I was in the neighborhood following up on some unrelated incidents. Noticed your porch light was on. Wanted to see how you were holding up." He was a bad liar. His patrol car wasn't in my driveway. "I'm managing. Thank you." "It's a tough thing," he said, his eyes scanning the space behind me. "A real tragedy. Sometimes, in cases like this, well-meaning family members get hold of misinformation, start imagining things that aren't there. It can complicate the healing process." The threat was veiled, but clear. He was here to warn me off. I needed to send him away without raising more suspicion. "The only thing complicating my healing is missing my grandson. Is there something specific you wanted, officer?" He paused, thrown by my directness. "No, ma'am. Just checking in. You have my card. If you think of anything, or find anything among Ben's things that seems odd, you call me directly. Don't go posting things online or talking to strangers. We're here to help." He was telling me not to go to the press or other cops. I nodded slowly. "I understand. Good night." I closed the door and locked it, leaning against the cool wood. The price was now my own safety. The law was not just indifferent. A part of it was actively aligned against me. Driscoll's visit confirmed the connection between him and David. What stood out was his brazenness. I waited until his headlights faded, then went to the kitchen. On the counter was a small, folded square of paper that hadn't been there before. My blood went cold. I unfolded it. It was a receipt from a gas station 40 miles away, dated the day Ben died. The timestamp was an hour before the incident on County Road 12. Scribbled on the back in Ben's messy, childlike handwriting was a single line. "Dad said it's a secret project. Don't tell Mom." David had taken him to a remote gas station before driving him to that lonely road. He was establishing a false timeline, creating an alibi for a pleasant outing. The real surprise was the receipt itself. How did it get on my counter? Driscoll must have slipped it to me during his visit, a taunting piece of staged evidence meant to send me down a rabbit hole or make me look unstable. The question now was in my silent hand. I had 2 choices: call his bluff or play the confused, grieving grandmother. I opened my contacts and selected Melissa's number. I had to know if she was still in the dark or if she was part of the darkness. The phone rang 4 times before Melissa answered. Her voice was thin and weary. "Mom, is everything okay?" I kept my tone light and grandmotherly. "Just checking in, honey. Can't sleep? Have you eaten today?" I listened to the familiar sounds from her house, the fridge humming, the TV murmuring. "I had some soup," she murmured. Then she hesitated. "David's out. He said he had to meet a client about the foundation paperwork. It's quiet here." A client at 10:30 at night. The lie was obvious, and it tightened my jaw. This was my chance to probe her beliefs, to find any cracks. It's good he's working so hard on the foundation. A wonderful way to honor Ben. I paused. "I was looking at old photos today. I found one of Ben at that gas station with the big plastic dinosaur. Remember? He loved that place." Silence. Then a confused sigh. "Gas station? Mum, I don't remember that. David always used the Shell on Main. Ben hated road trips. He got carsick." My heart pounded. She didn't know. David had taken Ben there alone for his secret project. The receipt was real, but the story was a lie for me. Her confusion hurt. My sweet girl was living in a house of cards built by her husband. "Oh, maybe I'm mixing it up," I said gently. "My memory isn't great. How is David really holding up?" She whispered. "He's strong for me, but sometimes I catch him staring out the window. His face goes blank, like he's not even there. It scares me." That wasn't grief. It was cold calculation. Tension filled the room. David was manipulating the investigation, watching me, and putting on an act for his wife, trapping her. "It's a lot to process," I said, my mind racing. "You should both talk to a grief counselor." "Maybe," she said. Then I heard a door open and footsteps. "He's home. I should go. Love you, Mum." The call ended. I stood in my dark kitchen, the silent house pressing in. The change was in what she didn't say. Her fear and David's emptiness were small cracks. I could use them, but involving her was risky. If she confronted him, he'd know I was the source. He'd eliminate the threat, and that included my daughter. I walked to the living room window and peeked through the blinds. The street seemed empty. Then I saw a glint of moonlight on a dark windshield under the big oak tree 3 houses down. The car wasn't there before my call. Driscoll, or someone else, was watching. My call had triggered a response. The game escalated. I wasn't just investigating a crime. I was in a counter-operation, and my next move had to be invisible. The next morning, I dressed normally in a blue house dress and comfortable shoes. I needed to be seen following a harmless routine. I planned to visit the County Historical Archive, a forgotten wing of the public library. I hoped it was beyond David's reach. I needed old records he couldn't alter, property deeds, old newspapers. I was looking for a pattern in his past. I made a show of buying groceries first, feeling that constant itch of being watched. At the library, I nodded to the elderly librarian and went to the basement archive. It was cool and smelled of old paper. I requested microfilm of the town newspaper from 15 years back, when David first arrived. I also got the property deed for his house. The work was slow. My eyes strained at the flickering green screen. I scanned headlines and social pages for hours. I found his name in a few harmless articles about charity events. Nothing useful. The deed showed he bought the house outright with a single cash payment 6 years ago. No mortgage. That was unusual. Where did that money come from? Frustration gnawed at me. I felt like an old woman chasing ghosts in a basement, while a murderer sat in my daughter's living room. Every normal day cemented David's story and deepened Melissa's grief. I was about to give up when a small headline from 14 years ago caught my eye. Local man missing, presumed drowned. The name was Robert Daly, a retired bookkeeper who vanished fishing on Lake Meridian. His boat was found adrift. No body was recovered. One detail snagged me. Daly had been treasurer for the Lakeside Community Church, the church where David, new in town, had volunteered to help with their budget review just before the man disappeared. It was a thin thread, a coincidence. But in that silent archive, it felt like the first crack in a dam. A man good with numbers vanishes. Another man, also good with numbers, arrives with a suspicious amount of cash soon after. With a trembling hand, I jotted the details on a scrap of library paper. As I gathered my things, the heavy archive door swung open. It wasn't the librarian. A man in a dark windbreaker stood there, his posture too alert. He scanned the room, his eyes passing over me before he turned and left. He hadn't been looking for books. He was checking the room's occupants. What unsettled me wasn't just being followed, but where. They were watching me even here. It meant my movements were predicted. I couldn't go home with this note. I slipped the paper into my dress sleeve and deliberately left my notepad, filled with grocery lists, on the table. Let them search that. I needed a new way to move unseen. I drove to a suburban mall parking lot instead of home. In my car, I used a cheap prepaid phone I had. I called information for Lakeside Community Church. My hands were cold. I wanted to find anyone who remembered Robert Daly and if David was ever connected. A pleasant-voiced woman answered. I used my frail old lady tone. "Hello, dear. I'm helping my nephew with a family tree. We think a relative, Robert Daly, was a member long ago. Would anyone recall him or have old records?" She paused. "Mr. Daly?" "Yes, that was sad. Let me get Reverend Miller. He's been here 25 years. After a minute, his kind voice came on. "This is Reverend Miller. How can I help?" I repeated my story. He sighed. "Bob Daly, a quiet, dedicated man. He kept our books perfectly for decades. His disappearance shocked us. The police had no answers." I asked carefully, "My nephew mentioned a volunteer named David helping him. Do you remember that?" His tone turned guarded. "We had many volunteers. I don't recall a David specifically. Those records are confidential. I can't help with that." He remembered, but wasn't talking. This call used up an anonymous resource. I hit a wall. "I understand," I said, sounding disappointed. "Thank you." I ended the call, sitting in the car, mall traffic around me. The connection was buried. I needed leverage. I thought of the property deed's cash payment. I needed to trace that money. But how? I'm an old woman, not an accountant. Then I saw it. In the electronics store window, a small voice-activated recorder like journalists use. A simple idea came. I couldn't trace money, but I could get a confession. I bought the recorder with cash. It fit in my palm. My plan became active and dangerous. I wouldn't just gather old evidence. I'd create new evidence. I'd confront him on my terms. Driving home, the black SUV was back, parked across from my house. No hiding this time. As I pulled in, Officer Driscoll stepped out. He leaned against his vehicle, arms crossed, watching me. A show of force, reminding me my world had shrunk. I gave a vague wave, unlocked my door, and went inside. My heart pounded, but my mind was clear. Their boldness meant they were worried. I put the recorder on the kitchen table. Passive digging was over. Now I'd lay a trap. The trap needed bait. I baked Ben's favorite oatmeal chocolate chip cookies. The sweet smell hurt. I packed a dozen. I wasn't just gathering evidence now. I needed to provoke David on my own turf and record his reaction. I called Melissa. I baked too much. I'll drop some cookies off. Just a quick hug. She hesitated. You don't have to. I want to, I said. I'll be there soon. Before leaving, I set the house. I hid the tiny recorder in my family Bible on the side table, microphone aimed at the sofa. I tested it. The red light was hidden. I put the flash drive on the lanyard in my purse. The other one stayed buried outside. I was going to the lion's den, but leaving a trail. David's house felt charged. Melissa's hug was frail. David came from his office, smiling. Eleanor, a surprise. But his eyes were sharp, checking me and the container I carried. Just felt like baking, I said, handing the cookies to Melissa. We went to the living room. I sat in my usual chair. David sat on the sofa, right where I'd aimed the recorder. Melissa made coffee in the kitchen. This was it. I took a breath. I went to the library archives yesterday, I said casually. Found an odd article about a man named Robert Daly who vanished from Lake Meridian. Did you ever fish there, David? The room went cold. David's smile stayed, but his eyes went flat. Lake Meridian? I've driven past. A sad story. Why do you ask? His full suspicion was now on me. My instincts screamed to run. No reason, I said, waving a hand. Just old news. Got me thinking about stories that end without answers. He leaned forward, his voice a low rumble that didn't match his eyes. Some stories are better left closed, Eleanor, for everyone's peace of mind. Digging can stir up mud, hurt people who are already hurting. He glanced toward the kitchen. It was a threat wrapped in concern, a warning. Then Melissa walked in with coffee, her face pale. Who's Robert Daly? She had heard. David was smooth. Just someone from long ago, sweetheart. Your mum found an old story. He took her hand, pulling her to sit beside him. We were saying how important it is to focus on the present, on healing. I saw it. A flicker in Melissa's eyes as she looked at him. Not agreement, but a dawning, terrible confusion. She was starting to see the disconnect. My bait had worked, but not just on David. It created a tiny crack in his performance for her. I finished my coffee fast and stood to leave. At the door, David clasped my shoulder, his grip too tight. Take care, Eleanor. These solitary pursuits aren't good. Maybe visit your sister out of state for a while. A change of scenery. It was an invitation to disappear. I patted his hand until he let go. I'm fine right here, David. This is my home. Driving away, I trembled. The confrontation was recorded. I had his threat on tape. But the real prize was the doubt in my daughter's eyes. The seed was planted. I had to survive for it to grow. Home, I went straight to the Bible. The tiny red light was off. I pressed playback. Nothing. Just a faint hiss. I checked the device. The battery compartment was open. The small battery was gone. He had found it. He disarmed my trap without me seeing him move, and he let me walk out knowing I knew. The missing battery was a clear message. I am in your house. I am always ahead. Your toys are useless. Sitting at the kitchen table, I felt a cold calm. Fear was gone, replaced by stark resolve. The legal path was corrupt. Direct confrontation was watched and stopped. My only goal now was survival. I had to get the truth to my daughter, Melissa, in a way David could not intercept. I couldn't stay. The house was compromised. I thought of the flash drive buried in the garden. It was my last untouched copy. I had to get it. But the SUV was probably still outside. I went to the back door, and looked through the window. In the early evening light, I saw a man's silhouette at the far corner of the wooden fence. He was tall and bulky, not Driscoll, a private resource. David was watching the backyard too. I couldn't leave the drive buried. I needed a diversion. I went to the front. I turned on every outdoor light, the porch light, the floodlights, the path lights. They blazed. I opened the front door and stood there in the frame. I put my dead cordless phone to my ear and spoke loudly, as if to emergency services. Yes, I want to report a suspicious black SUV parked here for hours. I heard an engine start and tires roll away. The man at the back fence would have heard. I had maybe a minute. I rushed to the back porch and slipped outside. I went to the rosebush and dropped to my knees. My fingers dug into the damp soil where I'd buried the mason jar. I found it, pulled it out, and wiped the dirt off. I opened the lid. The flash drive was inside. I expected a hand on my shoulder any second. Back inside, I locked the door and leaned against it, breathing hard. I had it. Now I needed to get it to Melissa. Not here, and not at her house. It had to be a public place with witnesses. Somewhere she went regularly. I remembered. Her grief support group. She went every Thursday night at the community centre. That was tomorrow. My plan formed, desperate and simple. I would go there, wait, and give her the drive. I'd tell her to watch it somewhere safe, where he wasn't. It was my last move. Everything depended on those few seconds. Then I saw it. As I caught my breath, my eyes fell on the hallway floor. A single, fresh, damp footprint, too large to be mine, was on the polished wood. It started near the back door and faded toward the living room. He hadn't just been watching. While I was at the front door, he had been inside. He had walked through my house. He didn't take anything. He just wanted me to know he could. The chilling truth was that tomorrow's plan wasn't just my last chance. It was likely my last act. I spent the whole night awake in the living room chair, holding the mason jar with the flash drive. Every sound in the old house scared me. The footprint had dried, but I couldn't forget it. My only job was to last until the support group meeting and give the drive to Melissa. My nerves were paying the price. David's control was total. He had men inside my home. He wasn't just a killer. He was my warden. At dawn, I forced myself to act normal. I made breakfast, cleaned up, and got dressed. I hid the flash drive in an old mint tin and put it in my purse. I also packed a tote bag with a change of clothes and my medicines. If I left today, I might not return. The black SUV was down the street when I left. I ignored it. I drove to the grocery store, then the post office. I mailed a cheerful birthday card to my sister, trying to seem routine. I could feel them watching. The man from the fence was in a sedan in the lot. They weren't even hiding. The meeting wasn't until 7. I had hours to fill. I went to a busy downtown diner with big windows. I took a booth and ordered pie and coffee. I needed people and light. I took a napkin and pen from my purse. I wrote a note to Melissa. This is the truth. Watch it alone. Then run. I love you. I folded the napkin around the mint tin. It felt like my last message. The waitress refilled my coffee. Rough day? You have no idea, I said, forcing a smile. A patrol car then cruised slowly past the window. Officer Driscoll was driving. He didn't look in, just drove by. It was a silent reminder. The dread felt like a weight on my chest. He was showing me there was no help coming. I paid and left. The afternoon was long and awful. I sat on a park bench, watching children play. Their happy sounds hurt. I checked my watch constantly. At 6:30, I finally drove to the community center. My hands were sweaty on the wheel. This was it. I parked in the crowded lot near the entrance, under a bright light. I saw Melissa's car. My heart clenched. I got out, clutching my purse with the tin inside. I took 3 steps toward the building doors. A strong hand grabbed my arm from behind. A man's low voice spoke by my ear. "Eleanor, David thought you might be here. He's worried. Let's get you home." It was the bulky man from the fence. He had stepped out from between 2 vans. His grip was like iron, pulling me away from the doors toward a dark sedan idling nearby. The meeting was just 50 feet away. Melissa was inside, and I was being taken. The man introduced himself as Carl. "Just come quietly, ma'am. No fuss," he said. His voice was professional, almost polite, but his fingers were digging hard into my arm. He was steering me away from the light of the community center, straight toward the open back door of that dark sedan. My mind was racing faster than my old heart. I knew one thing for certain. If I got into that car, I would disappear. Melissa would never get the truth, and it would all be over. So, I played the only card I had left. I let my legs go weak, becoming a sudden dead weight. I slumped heavily against him, letting out a low moan. "My heart? My pills?" I gasped, clutching at my chest with my free hand. It was an old woman's trick, but sometimes the oldest tricks are the only ones you have. Carl hesitated. His grip loosened just for a second as he tried to keep me from crumpling to the pavement. "Don't do this," he said, a sharp edge cutting through his earlier politeness. "Help me." I wheezed, louder this time, and I let my purse slip from my shoulder. It hit the asphalt with a solid thud. The mint tin was inside. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw a couple heading to their car stop and glance over. Carl saw them too. He couldn't very well drag a gasping old lady into a car right in front of witnesses. Not in this well-lit lot. "Crap," he muttered under his breath. He bent down, keeping one hand on my arm, to grab my purse. And in that moment, I struck. I brought my knee up. I don't have much force these days, but I aimed right where it would hurt a man. I connected. He grunted, his face tightening with a mix of pain and pure surprise. His grip on my arm finally broke. I didn't run back toward the building. He'd catch me in a second. Instead, I stumbled backward, putting more distance between us, moving toward the lights and noise of the busy street at the edge of the parking lot. "Stay away from me," I shouted, and my voice was shrill with real, bone-deep terror now. More people were looking. Carl straightened up, his face now a cold mask of anger. He took one step toward me, then stopped. He glanced at the gathering attention, then back at his idling sedan. I saw the calculation in his eyes. He made his decision. He threw my purse into the back seat of the car, slammed the door, and got in the front. The sedan's tires squealed as it peeled out of the lot. Just like that, he had my purse, my money, my ID, my house keys, and most importantly, the mint tin with the flash drive and my handwritten note inside. I had escaped with my life, but I'd lost the very evidence I was trying to protect. I just stood there, trembling all over, as a few concerned strangers came closer. "Are you all right, dear?" An older man asked, his face kind and worried. I could only nod, my throat too tight to form words. My whole plan was in ruins. The drive was gone. I had nothing physical to show. My eyes darted to the community center doors. Melissa was still in there, probably waiting, completely unaware. I had to warn her. I had to tell her everything with words alone. It was all I had left. Mumbling a thanks to the people around me, I pushed gently past the small crowd and walked back inside. my legs feeling like they were made of water. The hallway smelled of coffee and industrial cleaner. Muffled voices came from a room labeled Meeting Room B. I pushed the door open. A circle of about 10 people sat on folding chairs. Melissa was there, her head down. A facilitator was speaking softly about stages of grief. Every head turned to look at me, a disheveled old woman in the doorway. Melissa's eyes widened. "Mum? I need to speak with you. Now." My voice was raw. The facilitator, a gentle-looking woman, stood. "We're in the middle of a session. Perhaps you could wait." "No." I looked only at my daughter. "It's about Ben. It's urgent." Melissa stood, her face pale with confusion and embarrassment. She mumbled apologies to the group and followed me into the empty hallway. The door shut behind us, leaving us in the buzzing, fluorescent light. "What is it? What's wrong?" she asked, her arms wrapped around herself. I had no proof, only a terrible story. I spoke fast, my words tumbling out. "David killed Ben. It wasn't an accident. He pushed him. I have a video. Had a video. It was in my purse. A man just took it from me in the parking lot. David's man. He has people watching me, Melissa. He's been in my house. The police officer, Driscoll, is helping him cover it up." She stared at me, her expression shifting from concern to disbelief to something like horror. "Mom, stop. What are you saying? That's insane. David loved Ben. He's devastated. You're not well. This is the grief talking. It's making you imagine—" "It's not grief," I hissed, grabbing her wrists. "Look at me. I am your mother. I have never lied to you. He did it. I saw it. The video was from a camera in Ben's backpack. David swung him into the road." She wrenched her arms free, stepping back. No, I can't listen to this. You need help. First that story about Robert Daly, now this? You're paranoid." But her voice trembled. She was fighting it, hard. "He took out a life insurance policy on Ben, Melissa. He owns it. He controls it. He controls you through it." That landed. Her eyes flickered. She knew it was true. "That's for his future. Was for his future." She was crumbling. "Why would he?" "Because he's a monster, and he's trapped you." I heard the main door to the building open down the hall. Heavy footsteps. "You have to run. Tonight. Go somewhere he can't find you. Don't go home." The footsteps came closer. Officer Driscoll rounded the corner, his face stern. "Mrs. Wilkins, there you are. We got a call about a disturbance in the parking lot. You left quite a scene." He looked at Melissa. "Melissa, your mother seems very confused and agitated. I think she might be a danger to herself." This was his play. To discredit me, to use his badge to seal my fate. Melissa looked between us, a war on her face, the authority of a uniform against the ravings of a grief-stricken old woman. I saw the decision in her eyes. She took a step toward Driscoll. She just said terrible things, officer. I don't know what's happening." Driscoll nodded sympathetically. "It's okay. We'll get her the help she needs." He took my arm, far more gently than Carl had. "Come on, Eleanor. Let's get you somewhere safe." He was going to take me. To a hospital, or worse. My own daughter had chosen his side. The defeat was total. As Driscoll led me away, I looked back at Melissa. Her hand was over her mouth, her eyes wide with a horror that was just beginning. She was still caught, and I was being removed. Driscoll didn't put me in a squad car. He led me to his personal vehicle, an unmarked sedan. "For your privacy," he said, opening the passenger door. I got in, knowing it was for his convenience. He drove away from the community centre. He didn't turn on the sirens or head toward the hospital. He drove toward the older industrial part of town. "We're not going to the hospital, are we?" I stated, my voice flat. No, Eleanor, we're not. His professional sympathy was gone. His tone was tired, businesslike. You've become a significant problem. David paid me to make a traffic accident report go away. A simple job. Then you started digging. You found the video. You wouldn't let it lie. Now you're trying to turn his wife against him. That's bad for business. So you're going to kill me? It wasn't a question. He shook his head. I'm not a killer. I'm a problem solver. David is, though. And he's impatient. My job is to deliver you to him. What happens after is between you two. A family matter. He glanced at me. You should have taken the trip to your sister's. The betrayal was casual. A transaction. The law was just another tool for men like him. The end was near. I was out of moves. I looked out the window at the passing warehouses. My mind was strangely clear. I thought of Ben. I failed him. I failed Melissa. I was just a stubborn old woman who got caught. Driscoll's phone buzzed. He put it on speaker. David's voice filled the car. You have her? Yes. 10 minutes out, Driscoll said. Good. The old packing plant on River Street. The east dock door is unlocked. David sounded calm, almost cheerful. And Driscoll? The flash drive you retrieved from her purse. It's blank. She played us. The real one is still out there. Find it. My heart leapt. The blank drive. Carl had taken the decoy from my purse, the one I'd switched at the diner, putting the real tin in my coat pocket. I still had it. A tiny spark ignited in the darkness. Driscoll's jaw tightened. Understood. He ended the call. He looked at me, his eyes hard. Where is it? I said nothing. I just looked out the window. He swore under his breath and sped up. The car turned onto River Street, a desolate road lined with decaying buildings. He pulled up to a large, dark structure with a faded sign. The east dock door was a dark rectangle. He got out, came around, and pulled me from the car. He didn't bother being gentle now. He marched me toward the open door. Inside, it was pitch black and smelled of oil and rot. He shoved me forward. I stumbled and fell to the concrete floor. Before I could get up, a powerful flashlight beam hit my face, blinding me. Wait outside, Driscoll, David's voice said from the darkness. I'll call you when we're done. The dock door slammed shut, leaving me in the dark with the man who killed my grandson. His flashlight beam lowered, lighting the floor between us. I saw his expensive shoes. My knees ached. Where is the real drive, Eleanor? He asked. I buried it somewhere you'll never find, I said, sitting up. Driscoll already dug up my garden. It's not there. He stepped closer. Give it to me, and I'll make this quick. Or what? You'll push me in front of a truck too? I said. Melissa knows everything. He laughed. Melissa is home, sedated. By tomorrow, she'll believe she had a breakdown, fueled by her unstable mother. The story is written. You're the crazy grandmother who couldn't accept an accident. The cruelty was perfect. He'd make my memory a poison to my daughter. I felt the mint tin in my coat pocket. You won, I said, slumping. I'm just an old woman. It's over. I fumbled in my pocket and pulled out the tin. It's here. The only copy. Take it. I held it out. He hesitated, then stepped forward to grab it. As his fingers brushed the tin, I swung the small maglite I'd picked up from the floor. I hit the hand holding his flashlight. He yelled. His light clattered to the ground, spinning. In the crazy shadows, I saw his furious face. I scrambled back, clutching the tin, and ran deeper into the plant, toward old machinery I could smell. His footsteps pounded after me. I ducked behind a cold metal piece, my heart hammering. I pried open the tin, took out the flash drive, and felt along the gritty floor. My fingers found a narrow crack where the concrete met the wall. I shoved the drive deep inside and kicked dust over it. I put the empty tin back in my pocket. His light swept over me. "Enough!" he roared. He grabbed my hair and yanked me up, slamming me against the machine. The breath left me. He pressed his forearm against my throat, his face inches from mine in the faint light. I saw pure hatred. "Where is it?" he snarled. "Gone," I choked out. "You'll never have it." He pressed harder. Black spots danced in my vision. Then a new sound cut the silence, a metallic clang. Then another. Someone was at the dock door. David froze. The door groaned open, letting in a sliver of twilight. A silhouette stood there. "David?" A woman's voice called, thin and scared. It was Melissa. David's grip on my throat loosened from sheer surprise. He shoved me aside and I hit the machine, gasping. He turned toward the sliver of light, blocking it. "Melissa, what are you doing here?" He tried to sound concerned again, but it was too late. She had seen. "I followed Driscoll," she said, her voice shaking. "I heard you on the phone. The old packing plant." She stepped forward. "What are you doing to my mother?" "Sweetheart, she's sick," David said, moving toward her with his hands out. "She attacked me. She needs a hospital." "She said you killed Ben," Melissa stated. "She said you have a video." "There is no video," David said, smooth and reasonable. "It's a grief-stricken fantasy. Look at her. She's confused." I pushed myself up, my back against the cold metal. "The drive is here, Melissa," I croaked. "Hidden. He was trying to kill me for it." David whirled back toward me, his face full of rage. "Shut up!" he roared. He took a step toward me, then stopped. He had shown Melissa his true face. In the dim light, I saw Melissa's hand go to her mouth. She had heard the violence. The perfect image cracked. "David," she whispered. "It's not what it looks like," he said, turning back to her, but he sounded desperate now. "She's twisting everything. We're a family. We've lost our son. We can't let her destroy what's left." Melissa stood frozen, a silhouette. Her shoulders trembled. Her world was splitting. I had to give her the final piece. "Check the life insurance policy, Melissa," I said, steadying my voice. "Who owns it? Who controls the money? Ask him." David went very still. He didn't answer. The silence confessed for him. Melissa stumbled back. "Oh my God." It was a breath of realization. You did it." It was no longer a question. It was a verdict. David's shoulders slumped, then straightened. The performance was over. "Fine," he said, his voice cold. "Yes, I did. And now you know." He stepped toward her. "So what will you do? You have no proof. Driscoll is outside. It'll be your word against his. Your mother will be in a psych ward by morning." "Another step. We can still fix this. We can go home. We can mourn our son together, like we should." He was offering her a cage lined with velvet, a life of quiet complicity. I saw her hesitate under the weight of that future. Then her head lifted. "No," she said. The small word filled the space. "I'm leaving." David moved fast. He lunged, not to hug her, but to grab her. "You're not going anywhere." Melissa screamed, a terrified sound in the metal space. David had her by the arms, shaking her. "You will not ruin this," he snarled. I didn't think. I just moved. My old, hurt body got a surge of fury. I ran to his side, reached into his jacket pocket, and grabbed his phone. I yanked it free and stumbled back. "Let her go!" I shouted, holding the phone up. He turned, still gripping Melissa. Give that back, you crazy old woman. My thumb found the power button. I'll call 911. I'll tell them everything. Right now. He laughed harshly. And say what? Driscoll will be first here. He'll back my story. You'll be committed. But he hadn't let go. I didn't dial 911. I opened his recent calls, saw Driscoll's name, and hit call. I put it on speaker. It rang twice. David? We done? Driscoll's voice crackled. Before David could speak, I shouted, Officer Driscoll, this is Eleanor Wilkins. Melissa is here. David is assaulting her right now. I am recording this. The state attorney's office has the video file. They have everything. It was a wild bluff, but it was specific. It implicated Driscoll directly. The line went silent. Then his voice came back, tight and cold. I'm not part of this. The call ended. David's face went slack. His bought protection had evaporated in 4 words. He released Melissa, shoving her away. She stumbled, but stayed up, staring at him. You stupid old woman, David whispered, but the fight drained out. The plan was broken. Driscoll was saving himself. That's when we heard the sirens. Distant, then growing fast. Not one, but several. Driscoll hadn't just bailed. He'd called it in, making David the only problem. David's head snapped toward the sound. Panic flashed in his eyes. He looked at the dark machinery, then back at us. He had minutes. He pointed a finger at me. This isn't over. Then he turned and ran into the deeper blackness. Melissa rushed to me, her hands checking my face. Mom. Oh God, Mom. I'm all right, I said, though I wasn't. The flash drive. It's in a crack in the floor near that big gear. I pointed. Get it. Give it to the police who aren't Driscoll. She nodded, tears falling, and scrambled to where I pointed. Red and blue lights began to strobe through the open door, painting the grim room. The cavalry was here, but it felt too late for heroes. The loss was all around us, in the silence where a boy's laughter should have been. They found David hiding in an old office, trying to pry open a rusted window. He went quietly, his face a blank mask. The police who took him were from the county sheriff's office. Driscoll was conspicuously absent. I heard later he took administrative leave, then resigned. The system started to work once the rotten piece was removed. Melissa gave them the flash drive. She held it out in her grimy hand, and a detective in a plain suit took it with a gloved hand and a solemn nod. That tiny piece of plastic was the center of everything. They took our statements separately, under bright lights in a clean, busy precinct. My voice was hoarse, but I told them everything. Melissa did too. The weeks that followed were a slow, painful unraveling. The district attorney's office took the case. The video was conclusive. David was charged with first-degree murder and a host of other things. He pled not guilty, of course. His lawyer would try to paint me as delusional, the video as inconclusive. The fight wasn't over, but the battlefield had shifted to courtrooms and depositions. It was a different kind of war. Melissa moved in with me. Her house was a crime scene, then a tomb of bad memories. We didn't talk much at first. We sat in the living room, often in silence, each of us nursing our own kind of shock. The grief for Ben was still there, a vast, dark ocean. But now it was mixed with a terrible betrayal. Her healing had to start all over again. One afternoon, we were in the backyard. The rose bush had bloomed, bright red against the green. Melissa was weeding. I was just sitting, watching her. She sat back on her heels and looked at the soil on her hands. He told me you were sick, she said, not looking at me. That your grief had turned into paranoia. He was so convincing. He had an answer for everything. I wanted to believe him because the alternative was unthinkable. I know, I said. I'm sorry I didn't believe you, she whispered, her voice thick. You got there, I said. That's what matters. She finally looked at me, her eyes full of a sorrow so deep it had no bottom. What do we do now, Mum? I looked at the roses, at the patch of earth where I'd buried the truth. We live, I said. It sounded simple. It wasn't. It was the hardest thing either of us would ever do. We would live with the absence, with the knowledge, with the scars. We would get up each morning in a world that had proven it could be monstrous, and we would make coffee. We would remember Ben's laugh. We would be careful with each other's broken pieces. Seeing the truth come out was my satisfaction. Seeing him face a prison cell would be the world's justice. But my own peace was here. It was in my daughter's hands in the dirt, in the sun on our faces, in the choice to face a terrible day together. We had lost everything. The debt was paid. All that was left was the living, and we would do it one slow, painful, necessary breath at a time.